Hello and welcome back to the workshop. Something a little different today. I've had a few people ask for a video on my 415,000 mile Mercedes W210 E55. So we're going to do a little video on that. We're going to start with an oil change though, because I'm at 415 and 48 miles. I'm about 48 miles past due on my 5,000 mile oil changes that I do on this car. So we'll do an oil change. We'll pull the car out, do a little walk around, maybe take a little drive. It's pretty wet out, and this car seems to be struggling for grip right now. So while it's up in the air, we'll take a look at the tires because I haven't really looked at them for a while. This is one of those cars that gets driven and doesn't get much else other than whatever maintenance it needs. I've had it for about 3 years. Bought it with like 390,000 miles. My son had bought a 211 E55. And after driving it for a bit, I thought, wow, this is really nice. It reminded me of my old E39 M5. So I started looking for one, and then these started popping up in my Craigslist and Facebook Market search. And I thought, they're about half the price of the supercharged car. Well, let's see what they're all about. And I went and drove a few. And I drove a few cars ranging between 100 and 180,000 miles. And there really wasn't a lot of difference in the way they felt. And most of them had issues. They were in the $8,000 to $12,000 range. And then this popped up, Facebook Marketplace. It was out in Sonora and 390,000 miles. I messaged the guy, didn't reply as per usual Facebook Marketplace. So I went and looked at a couple of other ones, and I was about to pull the trigger on an $8,000, $180,000 mile car. And I thought, gee, I'd really like to see that 300,000 mile car and see what it looks like and drives like. So I messaged him one more time. And I think I said the key thing. I said, I'd love to be the guy who takes this to 500,000 miles. And then he replied, and he said that was what got him, because he doesn't want to see someone just turn this into a drift car or trash it. Original owner bought the car new at BMW, or Mercedes, I'm used to BMW, Mercedes-Benz of San Francisco. They had the car for 6 years, put about 60,000 miles on it, traded it in for a 211 E55, and it was then bought by, I'm not 100% sure. It's either the service manager or one of the service advisors at Mercedes San Francisco. And that's the guy that took the car from like from 60,000 to about 360,000 miles. He had some mega mile commute from Santa Rosa or somewhere like Sonoma up that way into San Francisco. And so he put a ton of miles on it, but being involved at the dealer, the car received any maintenance that it needed, and it got 5,000 mile Mobil 1 oil changes for all of its life. From him, it went to one of the techs at the dealership who lived in Sonora, another gigantic commute. He put another 30,000 miles on it over the course of, I don't know, less than a year, 6 or 7, 8 months. And then he wanted to sell it to get something a little bit more practical for the family. And so I drove out. I met him in San Francisco and looked at the car at the dealer, drove it. For what was it, $4,000, $4,500, and double the mileage of anything else I had driven. It drove really great. I mean, I could not tell, other than a worn out driver's seat, you would never know that the car had so many more miles than anything else I'd driven. It felt good. The steering was precise. The brakes felt good. It had plenty of power. And that's what happens when you take a car and just maintain it. These were not the high point of Mercedes reliability. This was right around the Chrysler merger time, and even in the door jamb, the sticker says Daimler Chrysler. But mechanically, the drivetrain was developed before that happened, and this chassis has lived on forever in Dodge Challengers and Chargers. Same basic underpinnings that are still going, maybe not today, but pretty recently. Naturally aspirated M113 is the code of the engine. 5.4 something liters. Mercedes rounded up to 55. 354 horsepower, 390 something pound-feet of torque. And of course, the comparison to the E39 M5 is inevitable. So a little less horsepower, a little more torque. They were all automatic, unfortunately. They all had a pretty intrusive traction control system like the E39 M5. But you could turn this off, but as soon as something happens and you start to break traction, it turns itself back on. So if you're out on a back road and it's a little damp and you're having some fun with the car will kind of surprise you when it suddenly breaks the right front wheel or something because it thinks you're getting the car too out of shape. So it's a great car for 6, 7/10 driving, especially in the dry. The E39 M5 had very intrusive traction control too, but you could turn it off and it would stay off. This one, you probably could pull a fuse or do something, but I don't want to do that. So it comes back in. I've got the 500,000 kilometer badge, which car had more than that when I bought the car. I'm about 50,000 miles away from being eligible to get the 750,000 kilometer badge. On Instagram a while back, I posted 666,666 kilometers when the whole odometer was full of sixes when it was in metric. It's back on miles because that just is how I've always tracked the oil changes. So we'll get it up in the air, change the oil, and then we'll pull it out and do a little walk around and show you what 415,000 miles looks like on a W210. So first we're going to open up the oil filter housing so the oil can drain from the filter housing down into the pan. Notice a hella horn. One of the things that were wrong with the car when I bought it was one of the horns was bad, and I just happened to have that, so threw that in. Couldn't find any gloves, so I'm going gloveless here. There we go. You could hear that draining. Find something to put that in. Yow. Holy moly. Okay. Okay, got the car up in the air. Forgot there was an under tray, so I got an 8mm ratchet. And we'll take a closer look at this, but yeah, I need some tires pretty badly. So this car, after the oil change, isn't going anywhere until I get some tires on it, especially with the rainy, this is end of December, so we're going to have some rainy weather for a while. So let's pop this off. I need to bring some electric tools over here. I still usually work on stuff at home. Haven't fully committed to working at the shop since by day this is Joe's detailing shop, and I don't want to take up a lift or be in the way. And most of my work is done evenings and weekends anyway, and all the tools are at home, so it's kind of convenient just to keep things in one place. But kind of getting to the point where it's nice to work over here. I can get the car up a little higher. I have a lift, same lift at home, but with the garage ceiling, I can't get quite as high. All right. And hey, look at that. Other than some rain, not covered in oil. Let's get a light so we can see a little better. A little bit of oil at the back of the engine, although it looks like it's coming from above, so maybe valve cover gasket. When you look in the inspection hole, the flywheel is clean, so I don't think it's rear main. Engine mounts look okay. Steering rack is nice and dry. Shocks I replaced, interestingly, the shocks were original when I got this car. I replaced them at 394,000 miles, and they were like mid-1999 date-coded Bilstein AMG stamped shocks. And honestly, they felt pretty good. I put Bilstein B8s, I think, the yellow ones, and they are stiffer than the stock shocks. Don't know if that's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a good thing. Yeah, that looks like maybe valve cover gasket time. And that looks like a 13, so let's get that ratchet. Ah, damn it. Obviously, that came out with more force than I was expecting. All right, let's stop the camera for a minute. We'll clean up the mess and let the oil drain. Okay, well, several towels, some degreaser, and some mopping later. The floor is clean, and I got the oil off the lift. Well, let's come back and look at what I was talking about here. So yeah, look at that cord on the inside edge, both sides. So if we go back a little further, you'll see tie rod. I replaced tie rod ends, I don't know, 6 months ago. Brought the car to a shop for an alignment afterwards. Never really felt right after, and I kept saying it feels like I've got too much toe out. I keep meaning to bring it back, but yeah, I never did. So I should probably get that the alignment looked at and get tires. So that's the front. But let's look around the back, around under here. So that's what I was talking about on the rear main seal. But if we look, if we can see inside here, if you can get a look at the flywheel, it's pretty clean in there. So I have a feeling it's just oil is dripping down from, can't get it to focus up there, but from the valve cover gaskets. Trans is dry. Rear tires, these little drip pans here, are also very thin on tread, definitely down to the wear bars or a little bit beyond. Diff is pretty dry. Flex disc looks fine. This tire's a little bit better. The right rear is definitely the worst of the two. Something that is got a big zip tie on it. Not sure what that is. It's got it looks like the bracket for the rear bumper. But bumper seems like it's on. Like I said, I haven't. This has been a pretty reliable car, so I haven't had to do a lot of work to it. Feeling the fuel filter is probably in that little compartment there. That would be not a bad thing to do at some point soon. All right. Let's take a walk around it from the outside from below here. The Carfax shows light incident from the front and rear, so bumper covers have probably been replaced. Mismatched tires, Continentals on the back, Michelin's on the front. I put pads and discs on it when I first got it. Lots of road rash. Yeah, the rest of the tire looks okay. It's just the alignment. I should have been more on that and gotten it looked at. So the only real body damage is this dent in the front fender on the driver's side. The story that goes with this is in San Francisco, some crazy man did a kind of a flying head dive into the car and maybe thought he was going to get some insurance payout, but there were too many witnesses. So the police basically just took him away and didn't do anything to the guy driving the car. Yeah, this tire is not nearly as bad as the other one. So I think these have limited slip, or maybe they just use traction control to keep it from going. But at any rate, the right rear obviously spins more than the left rear. So, all right, well, let's get it on the ground. We'll put some oil in it and we'll get a little better view here. Okay, put the under tray back on, new oil filter with the O-rings, and had to look it up. 8 quarts is what the capacity is according to the owner's manual. Also in the owner's manual, power output, 349 horsepower, 390 pound-feet of torque. I was off a little bit. Still, same idea, a little less horsepower than the M5, a little more torque than the M5. So Shell Rotella T6 5 W40 on this car, and I'm not really too particular about oil. I change it every 5,000 miles. The car's got 415,000 miles on it. You know, I think it's all fine. But let's start it up, make sure we got no leaks, and then we'll get it off the ramp. Okay, so we're got the car out. It's just starting to rain a little bit. We'll do a little walk around. You know, I've always thought of this car as being maybe 70% of an E39 M5 for like 25 to 30% of the price, because these things are really cheap. They do tend to rust if you're not in a easy climate, but no issues with this one. Interior, let's take that out. I've swapped the cushions on the driver and passenger seat, which is why the bladder controls are on the outside, which is a little bit of a nuisance. You have to be conscious of it when you get in and out. But it's riveted to the seat frame, and the plastic lines that go to the bladders are really fragile looking. And they work on this side, so I didn't want to mess with it. Original steering wheel was really beat up. Found a nice one that matches the wood on Lithuania eBay, so that went in. Otherwise, stock head unit, AC, wood's in pretty good shape for the most part. Door cards aren't bad. Put new floor mats in because that always makes a difference. And this was the driver's seat, which is definitely more beat up, and the bladders don't work. So it was a pretty uncomfortable seat. Back seat's really nice, as you would expect. Sunshade in the back works. It's funny, there's a, you could tell from the fade, you can't really tell here, but it's very faded where the sunshade would be up. But overall, you know, it's been a great driver. All right, we'll do a short driving video, even though it's a little damp. Tires are a little iffy. I've also got some oil in the trunk to take to the recycling place, so there's many reasons to drive nicely. So 415,048 miles. The SRS light is on because of the seat cushion swap. I wasn't really thinking about the airbag passenger occupancy sensor, which you can wire a resistor into that circuit and turn it off. It's not been much of a priority for me. I'm 99% of the time driving solo and commuting when I'm in this car. Well, that's a little bit of info on my W210 E55. These are really kind of overlooked cars. They are, you know, they're in the same category as an E39 M5, not quite as sporty, automatic, and traction control that you really, you can shut it off, but it turns itself back on, kind of precludes it from being quite the sports sedan as the M5. But it's a very competent car. And for the money, boy, you could buy them, a nice example for 10 grand, and it's hard to beat. They're great drivers, they're comfortable. There really are a very reliable, robust engine and drivetrain, and even fuel economy is not that bad. I kind of get into the low to mid 20s on my normal commute. Whereas when I had an E39 M5, I was in the mid teens, although I probably, the manual transmission, and probably drive a little bit more aggressively. But these are worth looking at if you're kind of into the mid size, somewhat under the radar, sporty sedan. Um, this is a rare night where this car is actually in the garage. I've sold off a couple of things lately and had an empty garage space, and this was at home, so I figured I'd stick it inside for the night. Did have the alignment rechecked, and there was too much toe out, as the tires inside wear would suggest. So the alignment was redone, um, and tires are en route. So next up, we'll get some new tires on the front end, and this will be back to the normal commute routine. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions on this or anything else that I've got here, feel free to throw them in the comments. At some point, I'm at the home garage right now. At some point, I should probably do a walk around the workshop, because a lot of the cars in the background are not mine. They're just friends who are kind of renting out some space from my son in his shop. But there's some interesting stuff there too. But I think next up, I might do kind of a final video on the 500 SCC. I spent this last weekend polishing it out and doing some cosmetic work, getting the paint looking nice, because that's probably going to be the next car to go. So stay tuned, and we'll see what happens with that. But again, thanks again for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.